Okay, so let's take a look at paragraph 2. And if you would, mark it as such. Just put a paragraph 2 here. And then let's begin to read. And I do want you to note that I have a couple of sketches at the bottom of this paragraph, which we'll look at in just a second. So, but let's read first. Energy, circle that in red. Energy is the ability to do work or cause change. So let's just get our green pencil right now and let's get this marked. So energy, and what is it? The ability to do work or cause change, causing change in matter, or to do work. And what is this? What is this idea of work here? So let's just take a look at right over here. And if you will take your red pencil, and let's get a good, no pun intended, but possibly so, let's get a good working understanding or a good working description of what work is. So, work is done when energy is transferred to an object, causing it to move or change. So again, let's get your green marker. So what is work in science? Okay, your mom and dad say, you've got a lot of work to do. Get out there and mow the lawn. Or we've got a lot of work to do this evening. Let's get the dishes done, and then we need to, clean up the garage or whatever. And so this idea of work, we understand work to be when we have something that's got to be done, and working makes us perspire and we get tired, or it's hard, or maybe it's an easy job. But we understand what work is. In a science sense, it's not so different. So work is when energy is transferred to an object. And I want you to think about that. Transferred to an object, causing it to move or change. So let's look down here for just a second. So we have a couple of pictures here. Let's look at kinetic energy first, because we might be most familiar with kinetic energy, and you might want it doesn't matter what color pencil you use here. I'm going to just grab my red marker here and use red. So kinetic energy, we all understand what kinetic energy is. Kinetic energy is when something moves. So if I had this block here that had mass, and I want this block to move, I'm going to have to apply a force. And so, in the most simple sense, we're just going to think, and I'm going to tell you, energy and force are not the same thing. They're not measured in the same way. But for now, if you'll just think of, we won't use the word force, we'll think of energy. So if we give this block energy, if we transfer energy to this block, then from this direction, if we transfer energy to this block, then it's going to move. Its position will change. It will move. And it will move a given distance. And when you get into physics in high school, this force and distance connection, you'll understand why I'm kind of saying, don't think that energy is force, because it's kind of not. But when you get into high school, you'll study this distance and force relationship. So for now, if we transfer energy to an object, it's going to change. It might change its position. It might move. If the energy we transfer to it is heat, it might change phases or change states. So, but in this case, if we apply energy to an object in such a manner that the object moves, we would say that the object has kinetic energy. Okay, in a little different sense, if we think about potential energy, so potential energy is when an object has a position against gravity, and we will say here, the force here is the force that's going to actually act on these objects. The force that's acting on these objects is gravity. Okay, so we're not going to deny that. Gravity is the force that's acting on these objects. However, gravity isn't going to act on the objects, at least not to make them move, if the objects are already sitting down here on the ground or sitting down here on the table. So in order to give these objects, these blocks of matter, energy, specifically potential energy, we lift them up and give them, in some manner, we lift them up and we give them a position against the force of gravity. So if we're lifting up and gravity is pulling down, then if the energy that gets stored in this block, because I put it up on a shelf, or I put it up, or I hold it up in the air, I hold a book up in the air above a table, and then when I pull my hand out from under the book or release, move my hand so that I release the energy in the book, then again, movement occurs. The energy gets transferred. The energy that I'm holding in the book is transferred to the book. Gravity acts on it, and the book moves. The book moves not because gravity is energy, but because I've given the book energy by holding it up above the ground. So, and don't get too hung up on all of this. Just remember that potential energy, the potential energy for motion, the potential energy to cause motion, energy stored in an object that's held above the ground, energy stored in an object that's held above the ground has the potential to cause motion if I release that energy, because gravity, the force that will act upon the objects, will pull those down. Okay, so, and again, don't get all hung up on the physics part of this. Just remember, potential is stored energy. Kinetic energy is energy that is carried, or energy that is in an object because it is moving, because it's in motion. Okay, so let's just read this example up here and we'll pretty much be finished. So, for example, when a golfer swings a golf club, the golfer transfers energy to the club, causing it to move. The club then transfers energy to the ball, causing it to sail into the air. Okay, so energy also causes other kinds of changes in matter. Energy can cause liquid water to change into a gas called water vapor. So how would that happen? Well, if we actually applied heat, so in this case, energy in the form of heat, okay? So heat energy can cause liquid water to change into a gas, because when it boils, it starts to turn into steam, and water doesn't even have to boil. Water can just get heated in a puddle during the day. If you have water in a puddle and the sun shines on it and heats that water enough, some of that water will evaporate and turn into water vapor. Okay? So, we'll not spend a lot of time worrying about what water vapor is. I think you know what water vapor is. So heat energy can cause liquid water to change into, and it can cause other substances to change states. Sometimes, or energy can cause wood to change into ashes. Again, what kind of energy? Well, heat energy. So if I apply heat, if I have a fire and I put wood on it, then we'll see that wood change. In this case, it won't change states, but it will actually undergo a physical change. There might even be a chemical change going on there, but it will undergo a physical change because the fire will cause the carbon dioxide to be released, and heat will be released, and so in a sense there's a chemical reaction there because the wood is changing from a solid to gas and heat, and then this kind of residue left over, ashes. Okay, so I do want to show you one other thing before we end this video, and so let me just kind of pop this picture up right here. So let me clear all that stuff out of the way here because we've got that done. And if you didn't get that all copied before I erased it, then you can rewind and you can get that. But I want you to look at this diagram for a minute, and I want you to think about it. And in this diagram, you see, let me get something to mark with here. Let's do it in red. So you see, and you may or may not want to draw this. We'll probably see it in class a few times, and you could draw it in class later, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to draw this. But here you see force, and what I'm going to just put in here is we're going to just use this to try to help us understand energy. Okay, so if we transfer energy, how might I transfer energy to a cart? Well, I might give it a shove. I might pull it back with a rubber band. I might hook a rubber band to it and pull it back with a rubber band. I might even be able to hook a magnet up to it and to the back of it and hook another magnet up to the back and pull it up against the same poles. And because the magnets wouldn't want to stay connected, if I were to release that energy, it might make the cart move away. But in some manner, if I transfer energy to this cart, then work's going to be done. So right here we might put work. Being done, and the work that would be done would be that the cart would move. So this sketch is kind of an interesting little diagram about how work actually works, what happens so that work is done. And what is work? Well, work is when something moves or changes, when an object moves or changes. Okay, so if you haven't marked the paragraph, please rewind it, go back and make sure you get the paragraph marked, and then we'll take a look at paragraph 3.